The Rebbe Zalgazun began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today is Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz. As far as we are concerned, we Hasidim, the major event in the month of Tammuz is Yud Beis Tammuz, the day when the previous Rebbe was freed from prison in Russia. And this is something which has a shaykhus to us, to each and every one of us, the Rebbe says, and to our families, and also to each and every Jew. As there's a famous letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe, which he wrote to the first year celebrating Yud Beis Tammuz, in other words, a year later, in 1928, in Tafresh Peiches. There's a famous expression of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which the Rebbe quotes many times. Loi oisi bilvad go ala kodesh baruch hu. It is not something personal which happened to him only. Elo koilan shel b'shem Yisrael yechune. Anybody that can only be identified as a Yid has a shaykhus to this yontif, to the day of Yud Beis Tammuz, and it is a geulot. It means a redemption for each and every Jew. And as the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, writes in that letter that this is not only which was relevant in that time, in other words, something which was temporary at that time when it happened, but it is something which is, as he uses the expression in the letter, a pe'ula nimsheches, meaning something which is an ongoing act. So therefore, the Rebbe concludes to us today as well, the specialty of this month is the fact that we have Yud Beis Tammuz in this month. Memela, now that we are on the Shabbos before Yud Beis Tammuz, before we enter the month of Tammuz, this is the Shabbos when we give bracha to the month of Tammuz. So Memela, we have the Shabbos when we give blessing into the month, and then we will have Rosh Chodesh, which this year we have 2 days Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, and actually the Rebbe says always Tammuz is 2 days Rosh Chodesh. The way the calendar is set up today, Sivan is always a Malay, meaning the month of Sivan always has 30 days. So if the month of Sivan has 30 days, it means there are 2 days to Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. And so the remainder of time till Yud Beis Tammuz is all Rosh Chodesh, and the days after Rosh Chodesh, especially, we also have Gimel Tammuz, 3 days in the month of Tammuz. And as the Rebbe mentioned here, and he mentioned later again in the Farbrengen, 3 days in the month of Tammuz, that is when the Rebbe was released from prison and was sent away to Kostroma, to the city where he spent until Yud Beis Tammuz. The Rebbe says when it really happened, in the year when it happened, nobody really knew what is going to be the end result of the fact that he's taken out of prison, but he's being sent off to Kostroma. But as it was proven later, it already shows us that Gimel Tammuz was the beginning of the Geula. So this is also a day of special significance. And all of these days have to be utilized. And especially the Shabbos, which we are in now, this is an opportune time, the Rebbe says, that we should accept good decisions, and these good decisions will be brought into a reality in the days of after Shabbos. But Shabbos again is the most opportune time for all of these decisions and to think into all these things and accept upon ourselves proper and good decisions. Here the Rebbe went into an inyan, mentioned that the Rebishter was the one who created the world. The Zohar tells us, just like the Rebishter created the world, Yidden, it's an expression of the Zohar, Barnash, people, Osik, are involved in the learning of Torah, and they keep up the world. Hashem was the one who created the world, and Yidden, through their involvement in learning of Torah and the fulfilling of mitzvahs, keep up the world. Rebbe says, however, we know Chassidus teaches us that not only did the Rebishter create the world, the Rebishter also keeps up the world. And here we come to the famous interpretation which is given in Shara Yichud V'Emunah. Right away in the beginning of Shara Yichud V'Emunah, the Alter Rebbe quotes the Baal Shem Tov on the pasuk La'olam Hashem Dvorcha Nitzav B'Shamayim, that constantly your words are standing in heaven, which means an indication, that what does it mean that the words are constantly standing in heaven? It means that the heavens are existing through the Dvar Hashem, which is constantly there, giving it the power that it should be able to exist. The Alter Rebbe explains about it at length in Shara Yichud V'Emunah. Here the Rebbe mentions that there's a story from Hasidim. The Shara Yichud V'Emunah is the second part of Tanya. The first part of Tanya is L'kutei Amorim. So there's a story from Hasidim that when the Alter Rebbe prepared the Tanya, he initially wanted to have the second part. In other words, the Shara Yichud V'Emunah should be the first part, and the L'kutei Amorim should be the second part. This was his initial plan. However, later he changed it, and he is taka the one that said that the Shara Yichud V'Emunah should be called Chelik Shein. However, in the introduction to Shara Yichud V'Emunah, there's an expression, the Alter Rebbe there writes, K'moishe Yizbo'er, as it will be explained. So what does it mean, as it will be explained? He's referring to an inyan which is explained in the first Chelik of Tanya. So this proves the fact that when he really wrote it, he wrote the second chelik first, and that is why he writes there, K'moishe Yisboer, as it will be explained. And where is it explained? It's really explained in the first chelik of Tanya. But the first chelik of Tanya, when he wrote it later. But when he prepared the Sefer for print, it should be the Sefer HaTanya. That is when the Alter Rebbe chose that the L'kutei Amorim should be the first chelik, and that Shara Yichud V'Emunah should be the second. Being that this is a story which is related in behalf of Chassidim, and we also know that the Tanya is called the Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah of Chassidus, just like in Torah in general, we have the Torah Shebiksav, which is the 5 Chamoshim. So Rebbe explains in the 5 Chamoshim we also have a similar. Torah begins with a Beis, Bereshis. Why does the Torah begin with a Bereshis? It comes to show us that there's really something which is before the Beis. There's really an Aleph. What is the Aleph? The Aleph is the Anoichi Hashem Elokecha D'Aseres HaDibros. However, in the order which we got it, what order did we get it? We got it in an order that the Beis comes first. When we know the Beis, then we can come to the Aleph. In fact, this is what Rashi tells us right at the beginning of Chumash. Rashi says the Torah should have began with a mitzvah. Or ma tam, what reason hischil bebereishis? Why did the Rebbe choose to begin the Torah with bereishis? So Rashi tells us because of koyach ma'asav higid la'amay. The Rebbe wants to tell us that he is the one who created the world. Who bara? He is the one that created it, and in Memela he's the one that gives it to whoever he wants to. So if the goyim with later generations come and say, "Listim atem," that we are thieves, that we have taken Eretz Yisrael away from them, so the pasuk right away tells us that it was created by the Rabbeinu Shalom, and he's giving it to whoever he chooses to give it to. The Rebbe added on when he was explaining quoted this Rashi, that the goyim will come and will say, "Listim atem," that we are thieves, we have taken away Eretz Yisrael from them. So the Rebbe says, no, he is Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'sa'aretz. He's the one that created it. Comes to tell us who's the creator. There's a concept in halacha of a shtar meaning document, sheyotza olav irul, which means a rumor came out, an argument came out to argue the strength of this document. So the halacha is, once it was proven that the document is a legal and honored document, then when such type of a document which had an irul, meaning which had those who wanted to fight it, and it was proven successful that the document is a good document, then this document is stronger than another document. But why? Because there was The reason is very simple. Being that there was an effort made to destroy the strength of this document, and it was not successful, so this in itself shows us how strong this document is. The Mela, we're getting back here. The Goyim are tiny listematim. So they want to weaken the document of our possession on Eretz Yisrael. But being that we have the proper response to them, that the Rebishter was the one that created it, and Koyach Mainz of Higid La'ama, he's showing his nation, his strength of whatever he did, and Memela, it is within his power to give it to whoever he wants to. So that is why the Rebishter has taken Eretz Yisrael from them and given it to us. So in other words, the Torah begins with a Bereshis. On one hand, it is Beis, meaning it is the second inyan. What is the first inyan? The first inyan is mitzvahs. But in order for us to know how to observe mitzvahs and how to fulfill mitzvahs, there is a need for an introduction of Beis, of Bereshis. This is what all boils down to. The same the Rebbe says is when we are talking in the two parts of Tanya. What is the whole inyan of Tanya, the whole inyan of Chassidus? The whole inyan of Chassidus is Yafutzo Meinesecha Chutza. To reach out with Chassidus, well springs of Chassidus, that it should reach to the Chutza, to the outside, to an area where it was not there yet. Where is this stressed stronger? That is in the second part of Tanya, in the Shara Yichud Ve'emunah. So Shara Yichud Ve'emunah explains how the world cannot exist without the Koyach of the Rebishter and all of that the Rebishter is constantly creating the world, as we just mentioned, otherwise the world will not be able to hold out. However, for us to be able to reach to the Aleph, there is a need to learn the base first, just like in Torah. What is the base? The base is that is the first part of Tanya. L'kutei Amorim. L'kutei Amorim in Tanya, there the Alter Rebbe explains how we go about, a person goes about taking care of his own self. In other words, the control on the Nefesh HaBahamis, and how he can set his mind properly. Yiska machshavtoi b'chayzik, as the Alter Rebbe uses the expression that he sets his mind firmly. All of this is needed as an introduction to be able to fulfill and bring out what is explained in the second Chelek of Tanya. So the Iker, just like in Torah, Torah begins with a Bereshis, which right away tells us it is Beis. Tells us it's Beis. And then after we learn Beis, we can come and learn Aleph and understand Aleph properly. What is the Aleph in Torah? Mitzvahs. The same when we're talking in Pnimis HaTorah, where we also have the Torah Shebiksav of Pnimis HaTorah, which is the Tanya. It is also in the same way. First we have the Beis, which is the L'kutei Amorim. That we learn first. However, what is the Aleph? The Aleph is the second part of Tanya, the Shara Yichud Ve'emunah. So Mamela, all of this is an explanation to the story of Chassidim, which is related that the Alter Rebbe really wanted to write the Shara Yichud Ve'emunah first. However, he wanted to write it first. He may have written it first, but when it came to set it up in a Sefer, Shara Yichud Ve'emunah was set up as the Chelek Sheni of Tanya, and the L'kutei Amorim is the first Chelek of Tanya. And then the Sikha, the Rebbe again came back, but this is the Shabbos before Yud Beis Tammuz. The Shabbos gives bracha to the entire week and gives bracha to Rosh Chodesh, and from Rosh Chodesh we enter the month of Tammuz, and the month is such a special month. So Mamela, this Shabbos again is an extremely special Shabbos. And the Rebbe continues, all of this is regarding the month of Tammuz. However, no difference when the day of Rosh Chodesh comes out, and it is also no difference what we read in the Torah on the Shabbos of Mavor. But this year, the way the Kviyas is, today we learn the Parsha of Shelach. What is the inyan of Parsha Shelach? Parsha Shelach, we read about the Meraglim. That Moshe decided, Rebishter told him, Shlach lecha. So what does Rashi interpret? What is the meaning of lecha? Ledaitecha. It is something which the Rebishter left up to Moshe Rabbeinu. He left it up to him. And Moshe decided to send the spies, to send the Meraglim. I'm saying this inyan of Moshe sending the Meraglim, this is compared to an inyan of the Rabbanon. We have inyanim that are min HaTorah, And we have inyanim that are midarabbanan. So something which is spelled out specifically in the Torah, clearly spelled out that this is what Hashem said to be done. This is an inyan of midaraisa. Here it's something which was left up to Moshe's decision. We can compare this to a darabbana, divrei soifrim or darabbana. Regarding darabbana, there's an expression in Gemara, arevim alai divrei soifrim, that what the Chachamim have added on is something which is orev, which is very pleasant. Why? Because everything which the Chachamim have added on, for what reason do the Chachamim add it on? The Chachamim add it on so that it should be a siyog, so that it should be a boundary to keep us, prevent us from being oivan and isa deraisa. The Chachamim have instituted their gzeiros. So again, this inyan of Moshe Rabbeinu sending the meraglim could come into this category. However, the Rebbe says, let us look at the end result of the meraglim. On one hand, here we're saying that it's something which Moshe did, and it was done on Moshe's decision. The Rebbe left it up to him. But if we read in the Chumash, we see that the meraglim, it wound up being a tremendous problem. Didn't wind up something desirable. The truth is, we have to go into the Haftarah. Today's Haftarah, and in general, Haftarah is something which has more shaykhs to the inyan of Golos. Why? The Rebbe mentioned many times already that the inyan. Why do we read a Mafter Haftarah? Haftarah was arranged because there was a time when there was a Gzeirah, a decree that they did not permit Yidden to learn the Torah on Shabbos. So the Chachamim in that generation came to a thought that let us find a Parsha in Navi, let them find, on a weekly system, a Parsha which will have a Shayches to the Sedra which should be read on that Shabbos. And Mela in today's Sedra, which is Parsha of Shelach, the Haftarah is in the beginning of Yeshua. What do we read in the beginning of Yeshua when Yeshua sent in spies? And here we find what Rochav did with the spies as she saved them and so forth. What do we derive from this whole inyan? From this whole inyan we derive how the Knaanim were afraid of the Yidden, and that is how was all of that created? All of that came as a result of the spies that Moshe sent. Memele, they later found out that the Yidden are planning to come and take over their country. So all of this created a tremendous fear. So here we already do see a positive thing in the end result of the sending the meraglim, that it did create a fear amongst the Knaanim, the fact that the Yidden are coming in to take over Eretz Yisrael. However, this is how we find it mitzad Haftarah, mitzad the Mafta. Getting back to Chumash, so here the Rebbe brought in what is explained in Hasidus. Hasidus explains why Take did the meraglim not want to go into Eretz Yisrael. Why did they bring such a negative opinion about Eretz Yisrael? So Hasidus explains that they did not want to go into Eretz Yisrael. Why didn't they want to go into Eretz Yisrael? Because they did not want to get involved on a daily basis, to be involved with materialistic things, to be involved with Gashmias. They wanted to live a life of pure spiritual ruchnias. And this they had in the Midbar. Once they entered Eretz Yisrael, they knew that they had to go into a system of Ishtachas Gafnoi v'Ishtachas Teinosoi, to be involved with their vineyards and with the planting and the growing of the wheat. So this is what they didn't want. What did they want? They wanted to go higher and higher of serving the Rebishter. Constantly going from one madrega to another. And with this the Rebbe says we can understand what the Gemara says. There's a Gemara that the meraglim ein lahem chelik lo'olam haba. The meraglim, what's the simple meaning of it? That the meraglim are not getting any part of the world to come, of the reward in olam haba. The Rebbe is teaching olam haba is a set level of reward. This is not what the meraglim wanted. What the meraglim wanted was to constantly keep on going from madrege to madrege. Just like there's an expression in Gemara, tzadikim ein lahem menucha. Tzadikim have no rest. Yelchu mechayil al choyil. They constantly keep on going from level to level. This is what the meraglim wanted. They wanted to live a life where they would be totally involved in spiritual inyanim, and ruchnistic inyanim, and go constantly from level to level, and not have no shaychus with any gashmis. Naturally, this is not what the kavanah was. This is not what the Rebbeishter's intention was. This is not what the intention of Dira B'Tachtonim is. But they, from their part, their thought was that they did not want to involve themselves with any inyanim gashmiyim, so that they could keep on going higher and higher in the learning of Torah. What is the lesson that we can derive from all this? The lesson, what we derive, is the same minyan. And the positive side of it, that a yid today also has to constantly strive to keep on going higher and higher, from madrega to madrega, to such an extent that when we go reach a higher level, yesterday's level is considered such a low madrega that it's considered like Mitzrayim, a limitation. And today we are going on a higher level. Though the Rebbe mentions that the concept of Mitzrayim in the true sense can never come back again to Yidden, because there's a Maral Meprog, where the Maral explains that once the Rebbeishter took us out of the slavery of Mitzrayim, and the Rebbeishter proclaimed Ki li b'nei Yisrael avodim, we are slaves to him and to no one else, then the whole concept of a Jew being a slave cannot be there anymore, because the Yid is an Eved to whom? To the Rebbeinu Shalom. But on the other hand again, the lesson which we derive from this inyan of the Meraglim is how a Yid has to strive to constantly keep on going from madrege to madrege, ein lehem menucha, not to ever satisfy himself that he's already achieved what it's supposed to. On the contrary, to keep on going from level to level. In this Sikha, the Rebbe also referred to an episode of the Tzemach Tzedek, that his Zayde, the Alter Rebbe, wanted to give him a gift. What gift did he want to give him? That in the learning of Torah, he wanted to give him a gift to learn Torah b'shkidu b'asmada. He should be able to dedicate himself solely into Torah. In other words, a special bracha of success in Torah. The Tzemach Tzedek refused this bracha. Why? Because he felt that this is a contradiction to the fact of Yagaita Mitzasa. In Torah we have to toil, we have to hurry. And there's an expression in the Zohar, Nahamidikisufe, free bread. Free bread he didn't want. Tzemach Tzedek didn't want that. When a certain time passed by, Tzemach Tzedek expressed himself that he regrets it. Why? Because Torah is endless. Arucha me'eretz mida, urechava miniyam. Torah goes without an end. So the brach of the Tzemach Tzedek, he could have taken from the Alter Rebbe, he could have taken, and that would have put him into one level in Torah. However, being that Torah is endless, he could have later gone on his own in a format of Yagaita or Matzasa and go deeper and deeper into Torah. So it's also the same minyan how in Torah and in general in Avodas Hashem, it is all in a way of Arucha me'eretz mida, urachava miniyam. It is endless, and therefore the goal of the Yid has to be to constantly keep on going from level to level, and keep on going higher and higher. As it's customary in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe explains in Inyan and the Rashi in the week Sedre. Question was raised in a Rashi in Kapitel Yud Dalet Pasuk Chav Zayin, that is the second pasuk after Revi. There Hashem is talking to Moshe and to Aaron, and the expression in the pasuk goes, Ad Mosai, how much longer La'eda hara azois, will this bad Eda means a congregation, a group, how much longer will they complain on the Rebbeishter? So Rashi quotes the words Eda hara v'goyma, and he says, who is he referring to? Who was Moshe referring to as a bad congregation, a bad group of people? He was referring to the Meraglim. And what do we derive from here? That the word Eda applies to 10 people. Mikan le'eda shehi asara. If the Torah uses a definition of an Eda, a group, what do we mean by an Eda? It has to consist of at least 10 people. Why? Because the Meraglim were 12. Now when Pasuk says, not just Eda, but the Pasuk says Eda hara, the wicked Eda. Now 2 out of 12 were fine people, Yeshua and Kalev. So we are left with the 10 who are Rashayim. So who is that? An Eida Hara. That is the Eida Hara, the wicked Eida. So the Rebbe asked a question which was raised in periodical of Oros Atmimim, which the Rebbe related to in the Farbrengen. Why does Rashi get involved in this altogether? The question, what is an Eida? That is a halachic question. In halacha, the question arises, how many people compose an Eida? Is it 10? Is it more? Is it less? Why does Rashi have to get involved here and stress it, that it means that 10 people are Eida shehi asara? What is the minimum of an Eida? 10. Once he got into this inyan, the Rebbe asked a few other questions in the general idea of the Meraglim. We go back early in the Chazarah. We find that after all the Meraglim were chosen, the pasuk says, "Vayikra Moshe laHosheya bin Nun Yehoshua." He called Yehoshua, and he no longer told him, your name should no longer be Hosheya. Your name for here and after should be Yehoshua. So what does Rashi tell us why? Because he told him, "Ko Yoshiyacha Matzas Meraglim." The Rebbe should help you from the plan of the Meraglim, that you shouldn't fall in with the plan of the Meraglim. It's a very obvious question. Moshe was the leader of all of Klal Yisrael. Why was he concerned specifically with Yeshua? If Moshe saw that something is going wrong with the Meraglim, he should have prayed for all of them. Or actually, before he sent them out, he's sending them out to such a mission. He has chosen 12 people. So Moshe should, as a leader of Klal Yisrael, should have felt the responsibility to be mispalel for all of them. Especially Moshe was well aware that the mission he's sending them into is a dangerous one. To bring back messages, what are the weak parts of the country, how can we conquer it, bring us back its fruits, and all of that. This was a very dangerous mission. Everybody can understand that to send a group of people as spies is something which is extremely dangerous. We've learned about it already when the brothers entered Mitzrayim by Yosef, and Yosef accused them of being spies. So from there already the child is familiar that a spy into a country is a very unwanted person. And therefore, if he's caught, he's punished very strongly, very severely. So here Moshe is choosing a group of people, and he's sending them all out in a mission to fulfill and bring back a message what Eretz Yisrael is all about. In fact, the severeness of their trip we can gather from another point the Rebbe says. When they came back to Meraglim, they said that it's an Eretz Eicheles Yeshver. It is a country that eats up its people. So what do Chazal tell us? That on that day there were many funerals there. Why were there many funerals? The Rebbe made a nest. What was the nest? Because people would be busy with the funerals, so they wouldn't pay attention to them. What do we derive from this? That normally when a group of people, 12 strange people, come into a country and they walk through the country and they look into various areas, the residents of the country immediately gets on to their minds that these people are spies. And to catch a spy is one of the worst things. So all of them are going on such a dangerous mission. It's not mentioned that Moshe should be mispalel on any one of them. What do we find? That on whom was he mispalel? On one of the Meraglim only. On one Meragil. On whom? On Yeshua. Why? Moshe, as a Roya Neman, as a sincere and dear shepherd to all of Klal Yisrael, should have prayed for all of them. Furthermore, if we look into a Rashi, one Rashi before this, which is in Pasuk Gimel at the beginning of the Chazarah, where the Pasuk uses the expression Kulam Anoshim, what does Rashi tell us? Oisa Shok Sheirem Hoya, that they were all fine people at that time. So if they were all fine people, they were all kosher people, why was there a need for Moshe to pray specifically for Yeshua only? If they were all good, then Yeshua was good together with a group of kosher people, with a group of good people. So the Rebbe is explaining this as follows. Something which is self-understood, the Torah does not tell us. It is definitely self-understood that before Moshe sent such a group of people on such a dangerous mission, he was definitely mispalel for it. The Rebbe compared it. He says, Moshe handled all the matters of Klal Yisrael. And at the same time, Moshe was learning Torah. And all his free time, Moshe was definitely learning Torah. Is it mentioned anywhere in Chumash that Moshe was learning Torah? It's not mentioned nowhere. Why? because it's something which is self-understood. What does this show us? There are things which everybody can understand with their own seichel. Something which can be understood ourselves, there's no need for the Torah to spell it out. There is no need for the Torah to tell us that before Moshe sent a group of people on such a dangerous mission, that he was mispalel for them. Sure, he was mispalel for them. No question about it. He definitely prayed for them before they went out on such a trip. And as Rashi tells us, Oisa Shah, at that time, they were all kosher people. Now, what happened was, after Moshe picked them, they began to congregate amongst themselves. And they began amongst themselves having their own meetings to plan their trip as Maraglim, as spies. It seems that right away, the Rebbe is learning, things started to go wrong. So when Moshe got aware that things are going wrong, so regarding Yeshua, Moshe was mispalel, Moshe prayed, and prayed for Yeshua, why Yeshua more than anyone else? The Rebbe says a very simple reason. Yeshua was a close disciple to Moshe, to such an extent, as the pasuk tells us, he never parted from Moshe. Now, could you imagine what would have happened if Yeshua would come back together with all of the Meraglim and would be with the same opinion as all of the Meraglim had? What kind of a reaction would this bring out by Klal Yisrael? They would say, aha, if Yeshua talks that way, Asimin, this is Moshe's opinion. Why? Because we know that Moshe's closest disciple is who Yeshua. Now, if Yeshua has joined the rest of the Meraglim to talk so negatively on Eretz Yisrael, so this is an indication that whose opinion is he reflecting? He's reflecting Moshe's opinion. So in general, that their mission should be a successful mission, Moshe Taka prayed for all of them. However, specifically, once Moshe saw that there is an atzas meraglim, there's already a plan by the meraglim, they have something in the back of their minds which they're going to come back with. So Moshe immediately went and made a special tefillah for Yeshua. Ko Yeshiacham atzas meraglim. The Rebbe should help you, and you should not be part of the meraglim. Now when we come further in the Seder, that the pasuk uses the expression Eida hara azois, this evil, bad community, Eida, congregation. So the truth is, when the Torah wants to describe wicked people, we had it already. We have regarding the people of Stoim. There's an expression Anshe Stoim roim v'chatoyim Hashem b'moed, that they were very sinful people. We find such expressions several times. Here the Torah added the word Eida. Eida means a community, a congregation, a group. Normally we would think that when the pasuk uses the expression Eida hara azois, this wicked Eida, that Eida should be a congregation, a large group of people. So Rashi comes to tell us no. It's not a large group that the pasuk is referring to as evil people. Who are they? They are only 10 people. Why? Because an Eida can be defined as 10. So in other words, Rashi is not getting involved here into halachas of explaining what is the shiur of an Eida. How many members have to participate in a group that the group should be worthwhile of the title Eida. Rashi is just trying to minimize. When the pasuk uses the expression Eida hara azois, there was a wicked group of people. So we could think that Eida may mean tens and tens of people, or maybe hundreds of people. So Rashi says no. You should know that Eida can also mean 10. Memela, now when the pasuk is talking about the Eida hara azois, who is this Eida hara? This Eida hara is the meraglim, because they wound up being 10 wicked people, because 2 of them, Yeshua and Kalev, were tzaddikim. So Memela, when the pasuk says Eida hara, it implies to the 10 meraglim. And it was not more than 10 that can be described and referred to as Eida hara azois hashehema malinim elayis tlunos b'nei Yisrael, that are instigating, complaining on bad things which the Yidden, instigating the Yidden. It's only this group of 10 people. So it's negayah to the pshat, it's relevant to the pshat and the pasuk to tell us that it is only 10 and not more. Because if not for Rashi, we would be under the impression that Eidah means a much larger group. It's customary in the summer Farbrengens that the Rebbe explains the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And today in the third Perek, the Rebbe says we have to look for a Mishnah which has a shaykhus to Yud Beis Tammuz. The sixth Mishnah, Mishnah 6, is a quotation of Rab Chalafta ben Doisa, Rab Chalafta, the son of Doisa, Ish Kvar Chananya. He was a member of the village of Chananya. And he would say, Asara sheyoshvim v'eiskim b'Torah, if 10 people sit and learn Torah, Shchina shruya b'neim, the Shchina dwells amongst them. And he quotes a pasuk. Rabbi says, if we look into the Perek, we will notice at times the Perek uses the expression learning Torah, Yoshev v'leimed b'Torah. At times the Perek uses the expression Yoshev v'oisek b'Torah. Oisek is a much stronger way of learning Torah. It's explained in the Mamorim of the Frierdiker Rebbe what is the inyan of Eisek b'Torah. Eisek normally means a business. What is meant once Eisek b'Torah? Eisek b'Torah means that a person is so involved in the learning of Torah just like it would be his own business. A person owns a business, we know there's no limitation of hours. Even when his office is closed and his factory is closed, he goes home, and he's home or he's wherever he may be, he always has thoughts coming into his mind how to build his business, how to be more successful, how to be able to earn more and so forth. However, when one is only a worker for somebody, so we know that the day is over, he finishes and he goes home. And he doesn't think about his work anymore. So when the Mishnah uses the expression, Yoshvim ve'oiskim b'Torah, Eisek b'Torah, that means we dwell in Torah in such a way, we're occupied in Torah in such a way as if it would be a business. In other words, Eisek b'Torah is an expression of a much stronger involvement in Torah as opposed to just Loimei Torah, Yoshev and Loimei Torah. The relation of this to Yud Beis Tammuz is because there is a maimah from the Frierdiker Rebbe written for Yud Beis Tammuz, to learn on Yud Beis Tammuz, also with the beginning of Asara sheyoshvim v'eiskim b'Torah. However, the Rebbe recently, this year, at several occasions, has been mentioning the importance, what the Gemara tells us, that every Jew has 3 simonim, 3 signs how he can be identified. What does the Gemara tell us are these 3 signs? Rachmanim, Baishanim, and Goim Lechasodim. Every Yid has to have the feeling of Rachmanis, the feeling of pity, Rachmanis. He has to have the midah of Gemilas Chesed to extend help to another Yid, and also the midah of Baishanis, the midah of embarrassment, for himself feeling busha, to feel embarrassed when he does something wrong. Midah of shame, feeling ashamed when he does something wrong. In fact, a few months ago, Pesach time, it was in several Farbrengens, and it was well as in the Rebbe's letter for Pesach, where the Rebbe elaborated on the subject and explained how every Yid has to fulfill each one of these 3 midas. Today the Rebbe explained, when we say that these things are a simon on a Yid, what is a simon? A simon it's a means of identification. In other words, Yid cannot sit back and say, I am a hatzna leches. What means a hatzna leches? Hatzna leches means he hides, he covers everything up, he doesn't want anybody to know anything about him. He's very modest, extremely modest, so therefore he doesn't even want to show that he possesses these 3 means of identification. This is wrong. Why? Because if this is a mean of identification, this is a siman, how he is identified for being a Yid, then it must be shown and it must be obvious that we excel in each one of these 3 attitudes. Where do we find this in this Mishnah? This we find in the name of the author who would say this quotation. Reb Chalafte ben Doisa, His name was Reb Chalafta, the son of Daisa, and he was a man from Kfar Hananya, from the village of Hananya. His name was Chalafta. What does Chalafta mean in Hebrew? Chiluf, to exchange. In Hebrew, to exchange means chiluf. When the Gemara tells us regarding the importance of the midah of baishonis that a Yid is supposed to have within himself, this midah of shame, of embarrassment, there the Gemara also ties it in to the concept of muta l'shanois mipnei darkei shalom, which means that because of peace, because of shalom, you mustn't always say the truth. So as muta l'shanois means, you change. Somebody asks you, where did you sleep last night? You don't have to give him a direct answer where you slept. You tell him it's okay, I'm rested. Then it goes further. Muta l'shaker mipnei darkei shalom, there's an opinion in Gemara. Shalom is so important that at times we are even permitted to say a lie, if by saying this lie, it will keep peace. It will keep shalom. It will not lead to any machloiket, to any quarrels. So what do we see from this? The midah of baishones corresponds to the concept of chalafta, of chalipin, of changing. Where was this Reb Chalafta from? He was a member of the village of Hananya. What is the village of Hananya? Hananya stems from the word Chanina. What does Chanina mean? I've helped somebody. I was choinein somebody, which is the concept of Gemilas Chesed. Why was he from the village of Hananya? What is the stress? Village as opposed to city. Rabbi continued. In a city, the Gemara tells us various definitions between a village and a city. One of them is a city is supposed to have asara batlonim. Simple meaning of it is 10 people that are not occupied and they sit and learn. However, batlonim has another meaning. A batlon means a person who is not occupied. What does it mean, what we would call in Yiddish? In Yiddish it would mean a leidikeya, somebody that doesn't do anything. What does this fellow do? Doesn't do anything. So what does he occupy himself with? Rabbi uses the expression, he goes from one redel. A redel means a circle of people. Circle of people that are discussing gossip. He goes from one circle to another circle and carries stories from one circle to another circle. He has nothing what to do. So what does he occupy with himself with? To carry stories from one area to another, from one group of people to another. Are these stories true? Did you take your time to investigate that what you're relating about this person happened or didn't happen? No. No need. He has news. He has a new story. So he goes from one circle, from one redel. He gives it over to one redel. Then he goes to the next redel of people, to the next circle of people, and he gives it over to them there. Here the Rebbe stress, the pasuk tells us, where the pasuk says, you should not talk rechilas. Rechilas means carrying, this is what that person said about you, and that person said about you. So the pasuk uses the expression lo yiseilech rachim. You shouldn't go and talk rechilas. Pasuk, why does the pasuk stress the going? Pasuk could have said, don't talk rechilas. Don't carry from one person to another that this person said bad about you, and you're carrying it to him, and by doing this, you're creating the opposite of Avos Yisrael from one Yid to another. Because nature of people is that it's done in a way, he walks from one group to another group. Here he picks up this message, here he picks up another message. But it says you have nothing what to do. You're a batlon. Why don't you sit down and realize the importance of learning chitas? Did you learn the Pasha Chumash today already? The Rebbe says. Chitas is something which was instituted by the Rabbeim to learn the Parsha Chumash daily, and it is something which has a shaykhis. It is relevant to each and every Yid. Each and every Jew has to learn the Parsha Chumash daily, Sunday till Sheni, the portion of the week, Monday from Sheni to Shlishi, and so on, until that by the end of the week he finishes the entire Sedra. But he has no time for that. He's busy. What is he busy with? He's busy with carrying messages from one to another, and going from one group of people and relating things into another group of people to relate them. This does not lead to Achdus Yisrael, to total unity amongst Yidden. Definitely not. Not only that, even to Avas Yisrael, this also does not help. This is not a help in any way to create love from one Yid to another. So that is why the Pasuk stress, the Mishnah rather stresses, Rab Chalafta ben Doisa ish kfar Chananya. He wasn't like a person from a city, but from a village. In other words, the concept of Asara Batlonim, Lady Gayas, people that have nothing what to do, does not exist. In a village, everybody is busy. Everybody has his duty, his task, and that is what they all do. So we already have a stress for the midah of Baishonis, as well as for the midah of Gemilas Chesed. Now what we have to find is where do we have an indication for the midah of pity, for the midah of Rachmanis in this Mishnah. So the Rebbe goes a step further, and he teaches Rab Chalafte, the son of Doisa. The word Doisa reminds us on the Hodas, Hadassim, which we use Sukkot. What is the Hodas known for? The Hodas has a very good odor, a very good smell. In fact, it could even be used in Psumim. Why? Because it has a good odor, a good sense as well. Good scent. What is the midah of Rachmanis? You have pity on a person. Person is in a certain situation where really you can't help him. Or if there's any help which you can do for him, you have already extended your hand and you helped him. Now you're expressing your feeling of sympathy, you're feeling with him in his position, what he is in now. Whether it is something good, a simcha, you're participating with the person in his simcha, or you're participating, chas v'shalom, when in the contrary, in the opposite of a simcha, when a person is in a problem, and you're expressing a feeling of rachmanis towards this person. What is this expression? This expression is really this feeling, it's really nothing tangible. It's not that you're giving him something, or you're assisting him in any way. It's an expression which is given through a feeling. What is this feeling? This feeling is compared to a smell. It's just like a hodas. It's an inyan of an odor. What is the inyan of a smell? By a smell, there's also nothing tangible. It's not that you have something mamoshistic, which you're giving, which is going from hand to hand. It's the odor that is there. The same thing, the midah of Rachmanis, is an expression of, is an emotional expression which is compared to a hodas. So again, in this Mishnah, we have an indication on all the three middas which a Jew can be identified by, which is by Rachmanis, by Shonim, and Goyim Lechasod. The Rebbe also referred to the Shir in the Rambam. In the Rambam, it's in the halachas of Truma. And the halachas of Truma, the Rambam tells us the procedure, how a Yid in Eretz Yisrael would go about taking care of his wheat, for example. So the first thing that has to be given is Truma. Truma is given to the Kohen. After the Truma is given to the Kohen, then comes the Meiser, which is given to the Levi, and then comes the Meiser Oni, which is given to the poor. Not every year we have Meiser Oni, it goes on a rotation system. Some years we have Meiser Oni, and some years we have Meiser Shein. The Rebbe is asking a question. What would be the case if a Yid is confronted with a situation where he has to contribute towards the Beis HaMikdash, and there's a poor person standing right in front of him, and this poor person is also asking for a donation, and the person needs the donation so that he can be able to sustain himself? Whom should he contribute to first? The answer is very simple. Definitely he should contribute first to the poor person who's there hungry and begging for a donation. No question about it. He has preference. In fact, there's a famous Gemara about Nochem Mishgamzu, where Nochem Mishgamzu delayed giving tzedakah to a person, and what happened was, by the time he came about to give tzedakah to the person was no longer around. The person starved from hunger. Therefore, Based on this, the Rambam was teaching us halachas, and it's not only the halachas, but it's the moral behind the halacha. So if the question arises, what should he do first? Should he give truma first, which is the share of the wheat that goes to the kohen, or should he go ahead and give the meiser ani, the meiser which is going to the poor? Obviously, in line of what we just discussed, it should be given to the poor first before we go ahead and feed the kohen. And the Rambam paskins that first what we do is we give to the kohen, and later comes the inyan of meiser. So the Rebbe explains. The reason is a very simple one. Let us look into the concept of truma. The concept of truma is chita achas poiteres es akri. What is the quantity of what has to be given truma? From original halacha, if he was to take only one wheat out of a huge basket, out of a huge kri, it would be sufficient. Later, the Chachamim said that it has to be given in the most desirable ways to give one of 50. But me'ikar hadin, there is no shia min ha'Torah. The Rambam right here says, chita achas, one wheat is sufficient. Therefore, the Rebbe says, if one wheat is sufficient, there's no measurement needed, there is no time occupied to go ahead and take one wheat out of a kri, no big deal. The poor person who's standing there and waiting to be fed with the meiser ani, what you're going to give him, by taking one little wheat out of the kri meaning this basket, in Hebrew it's called a kri, and giving it to the kohen, and putting it aside for the kohen, this will in no way delay the contribution which is going to be given to the poor person. And on the other hand, the poor person will be gaining. Why? Because he will get something which is worthwhile, which is roy to be eaten, something which the truma was already taken off from. So the poor person is really not losing out. You're not detaining him. It's not like there's a poor person standing there hungry and you're telling him, wait, I'm going to take care of another matter. Once I'll take care of the other matter, I'll get back to you. All you got to do is take one little wheat, throw it out, put it aside, and then thereafter you could go and take care of the araman of the poor person right away. Mele, the Rebbe says, there's no longer a question that we are delaying feeding the poor and getting involved in taking the truma, because the taking the truma is really something which does not occupy us for any lengthy amount of time. It's something which can be done instantly. And at the same time, the ani is going to gain because he's going to receive food which truma was taken off from already, which he immediately can go ahead and eat. In the Zohar in this week's Sedra, as it's customary in the Farbrengen, that the Rebbe explains a ha'ara, some notes on the Zohar from the interpretation of his father. There's a Zohar in this week's Sedra, Zakoi inin Yisrael ma'amin akum da'alme, that the Yidden are much greater than the Goyim. Why? Continues, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is proud of them. He uses three various expressions how the Rebbe takes pride in Yidden amongst Goyim. Rebbe is asking, naturally, this is what all of Torah is full with. How the Rebbe has preferred Yidden over Goyim. What does the Zohar introduce here? Something new, that Zakoin in Yisrael that the Yidden have more merit than the Goyim. This is what we've been learning all over. And he stresses it in three different expressions. Rebbe explains as follows. To say that the Yidden have more merit than Goyim, no question about it. However, this is when we're talking on an neshama level. We say in davening, Ato v'chartonu mikol ha'am, you have chosen us from amongst all nations. So we say in Yontif Dikesh Benes, or we say Uvonu v'charto mikol ha'am v'loshen. So the Alter Rebbe explains that not only this doesn't apply only to the neshama, this applies to the guf, to the body of a yid. That even though, as it seems to the external eye, that yid has a body and the guy has a body. So what difference is it between the yid and the guy? Still, we are told that the Rebbe has chosen us amongst all the guys. So in other words, we're talking on a level where there could be a comparison between Yidden and Goyim. And at the same time, the Rebbe did not allow this comparison and has chosen us from amongst them. Because the truth is that Goyim were also created by the Rebbe. As we say, as the famous episode which is related in Chazal, where one Tana came across and met somebody and he told him how ugly looking he is, and the individual responded to him, Leich uman she'asani, go ahead and complain to the master that has created me. This definition of master that has created me applies not only to Yidden. The Rebbe was the master that created Goyim as well as Yidden. Or if we were to use the expression briois, those who were created, it's also an expression in Chazal. What does that mean? Being created by the Rebbe, to be created by the Rebbe, that everyone is. So this is what the Zohar tells us. Even though on that level, where we have an equivalence to Goyim, to the fact that we are human beings, we were all created by the Rebbe, and they were created by the Rebbe. Still the Zohar tells us that Yidden have much more merit than the Goyim, and the Rebbe is proud of us, Isre behu, Iskine behu, Ispoya behu, and takes pride in them and so forth. At the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke about the importance of preparing for Yud Beis Tammuz, and anything organized which has to take place definitely requires preparation. So in order we should be able to make various Yud Beis Tammuz gatherings all over, there's need to, that proper effort and planning and preparation should be made. The Rebbe said this applies to Yud Beis Tammuz, and not only Yud Beis Tammuz, but also the days before Yud Beis Tammuz, like the day of Gimel Tammuz, 3 days in the month of Tammuz, which we spoke about earlier, or even Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. And Rosh Chodesh we have 2 days. We have the day of Shabbos and the day of Sunday, and these are appropriate days to make Chassidische Farbrengens, make them in public places or as well as in homes, and should be a true Chassidische Farbrengen. And this, the Rebbe says, is applicable to men as well as to women, naturally separate, and also to children, boys as well as girls, and also in a separate way, separately boys and separately girls. And it should all be in a way, when the children's Farbrengens are made, it should be in a way of lahazir gedoyle malaktanim, that the adults should be in charge of the younger ones and make sure of the younger, supervise it and make sure that it is done properly. But also urged about the importance of the summer months. See to it that every child is spending its summer in a way where the shemesh u'mogein havaya lekim. It's explained in Chassidus that Avodas Hashem of summer has the assistance of the shemesh of the sun, which is shining. The Rebbe says that every child is spending its summer in a way that where the sun, shemesh,